There was breaking news that the depositions were made public in the civil lawsuit Gabby Petito's parents brought against Brian Laundrie's parents and their attorney. And the Laundries answered questions they were asked, and, in my opinion, screamed out that they were contrived to support their position. The trial is scheduled to start in May 2024, and these depositions are revealing. So that you get a feel of what these depositions are all about, they are for discovery in the current lawsuit. Let's hear a brief overview of this current case from Fox 13.
Their beautiful daughter was taken from them. Not only that, they were denied the right to face the person who murdered their daughter.
That person was Brian Laundrie, Gabby's boyfriend, who investigators say admitted in a notebook to killing her during their cross-country trip in 2021. Weeks later, Laundrie took his own life in Myakkahatchee Creek Park near his parents' home in Sarasota County. Gabby's parents filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Laundrie's estate. The two sides recently agreed to a $3 million settlement. Petito family attorney Patrick Riley tells us that's an arbitrary amount, far greater than what Laundrie's estate would likely include, but it allows Gabby's family to move forward.
There's no amount of money that could compensate them for the loss of their daughter. And whatever monies they do receive will go to the Gabby Petito Foundation.
But this settlement does not impact a second lawsuit filed by Gabby's parents, accusing the Laundries of intentional infliction of emotional distress. They say Brian's parents weren't forthcoming with investigators and released public statements contrary to what they knew. Tampa attorney Anthony Rickman, who's not involved in this case but has followed it closely, explained how that lawsuit is different.
Proactive step, releasing to the press through their attorney that they hoped Gabby would be returned safely, knowing that she was already killed by their son. That's what creates the cause of action in that case.
The Laundries deny those allegations. In response to the settlement announced Thursday, their attorney told Fox 13, quote, "Hopefully this brings some closure to this one chapter of this tragedy, and I look forward to working with Pat Riley to resolve the litigation pending against Chris and Roberta."
Hi everyone, it's Karen Cole here, and in a few minutes we are going to dive into the depositions that were made public. I will tell you my analysis of these depositions, which may surprise you. My analysis may challenge you. And when reading these depositions, I was reminded of what Sir Matthew Hale, Chief Justice in Britain, said over 353 years ago as I speak to you today. He said, "I suffer not myself to be prepossessed," meaning preoccupied, "with any judgment at all, till the whole business and both parties be heard and not be solicitous," meaning not to show interest or concern with what men will say or think, so as long as I keep myself exactly according to the rule of justice. I found these words to be very wise when judging a case. So that's what he's trying to say. Are we more concerned about being morally right or following the law? And when you read the depositions in full, it is hard not to show interest and concern with regard to morality, to right and wrong, or good or bad behavior when it comes to decency. This case will be decided by a jury, so keep that in mind. In my opinion, there is a high probability that a jury will decide in favor of Gabby Petito's parents because of the moral aspect. Will you be able to use critical thinking in coming to a just decision in your own mind? So I have done a video on the background of this lawsuit, which you can see on the screen, and I will leave a link in my description area below. So that video left off with the judge taking time to come to a decision if the lawsuit should go forward or not. It had been decided that the case will go forward. So that is why there is a trial scheduled in May of some time in 2024, though I don't have the exact date. So just to give you a brief background on what this lawsuit is about, Gabby's parents are seeking at least 100,000 American dollars for damages for the mental anguish that they suffered due to the alleged deceit. The lawsuit also alleges that Brian's parents helped Brian conceal Gabby's murder and were making plans for him to flee the country. And depositions are oral examinations used for discovery prior to going to court. In England and Wales, in civil cases, we do not examine parties prior to going to court this way. We submit written questions from statements made. Then any issues unresolved the judge will then decide on after the case has been argued in court, and depositions help the parties prepare for trials. The questions are put to the parties and witnesses, which then forms a statement that can later be used to refresh the memory or impeach, meaning if something different is said at the trial in person, then you can point out this. So how far back does our judiciary system go? Well, in the Bible, the book of Exodus, Moses is asked to establish a judiciary system and to seek out able men who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain, and appoint them as officials to share the load of deciding legal disputes. And when a trial is by a jury, they become the fact finders. They decide the case, not a judge. And I have noticed not many witnesses get held in contempt if their story changes. This could be because over time memories can become clear or they can fade, and a jury has that challenge of deciphering the truth. So when the breaking news hit that the 2023 depositions, which were issued, and I have read them on scribe.com, was that the Laundrie's depositions were filed with the court on the 12th of February 2024. So what I'm going to do is basically give you parts of the deposition in a story form, because the deposition transcripts covers every ums and ahs, and it's not really pleasant to read. So I just want to really point out the discrepancies that jumped out in my view, and then you can decide if the discrepancies prove the case against the Laundries, which we will also look at. So Roberta is asked about her relationship with her son Brian. She said he had no anger issues, never got into any trouble at school, no fights, he had no temper. He was a very sweet, loving boy. Not much changed after he met a girl, and Gabby became his girlfriend, or Gabrielle, in mid-2019. So Gabby and Brian moved to Florida from New York in December of 2020. They lived rent-free in an investment property that the Laundries owned for about a year, and then they moved in with the Laundries. Now, at this point, I think it's important to say, as Gabby is described by Brian's mother as friendly, sweet, jokes around a lot, but later she then describes Gabby as she just disappears, she takes off, she doesn't return. They found out she went back to New York, and nobody mentioned this to Brian's mom. She mentions several occasions where Gabby was expected to be, there for dinner, but she would just not show up, or she wouldn't come home until 4 a.m. So remember that, as it will be important later on as the story unfolds. So let's jump to the road trip that Gabby and Brian took in 2021. This was Brian and Gabby's second road trip, according to his mother, and this will become important when we hear the reasoning for the burn after reading letter that Brian's mom says she wrote to him when they were leaving for their second road trip, as she had a feeling that they would be gone longer, and indeed they were, because they had decided to work for a farmer and learn farming. Yet later on she adds to her story that the burn after reading letter was written to express her love to her son because their relationship was strained. The letter has no date, and Gabby's parents allege The letter was given to Brian after she found out what he did to Gabby, basically implying that she knew all along. So Brian came home on the 17th of August 2021 to move stuff that they had out of storage to the Laundrie's house to save money. He was home for about a week. I found this kind of strange, but anyway, they said that they had not paid for his flight, and she said that she didn't ask about Gabby because they had talked to her on the phone. The weird thing is, Brian never told his parents about the Moab police stop on the 12th of August 2021. She said they only found out about that after Brian was missing, and it was on the news. The other thing I found odd is that she said they talked for about 25 minutes, 2 days after the police stop. But she said they were just talking about him coming home and emptying the storage unit. On the 16th, there is evidence on her phone that she called Brian at 1 a.m. in the morning. She said that she had no idea how or why that call was made, but the call didn't go through. Then at 7 a.m. she calls attorney Bertolino's office the next day. She couldn't figure out why, but then they worked out there was some sort of a time difference and figured out that it must have been in the afternoon. So she thought that it must have had something to do with some property they were investing in with Bertolino. This too, I think, is important, so remember that. So we're still talking about Brian's mother here. Her phone log showed Brian tried to call her several times around the 29th of August. She said she was at the beach with her grandchildren. She said Brian had talked to them. Brian then calls her later. They had a long, normal conversation about her being at the Daytona Beach. And near the end of the phone call, she said he suddenly changed and sounded very upset. So now back to the phone call of the 29th of August when she said she was talking to Brian. In her husband's deposition, he said that's when stuff hit the fan. So she was asked in her deposition what had kind of happened. And she said she had called Brian to see how he was. On the 29th of August, she said Brian sounded normal as they were catching up. Then she says Brian completely changed. She says he sounded upset. He was not calm. So she said she didn't want to push it, and they said their goodbyes. She then asked Chris, her husband, to call Brian back, and he did so. And Brian tells him that Gabby's gone. Please call a lawyer. Roberta, Brian's mother, thought that this could have meant several things, like they got into a fight, that Brian hit Gabby, or that maybe she was going to press charges against him. My question is, why would she say that if she didn't even know about the Moab stop? And this was very odd, but later Roberta admitted it probably went through her mind that she thought Gabby was dead, or that Brian was in some kind of trouble. My question is, would all this make sense if Brian told them about the incident in Moab with the police? Why would she just jump to that conclusion? I mean, I thought he was a non-violent, loving boy. Anyway, the week Brian came home, it just doesn't make sense that he didn't tell them about the Moab stop.
This is newly released surveillance video that investigators believe is the last time Gabby Petito was seen alive. She's there on the left, Petito and Brian Laundrie seen in that Whole Foods store in Wyoming, and this was back on August 27th. 2021. Now, we do know that Gabby Petito was murdered by Brian Laundrie.
And on the 27th of August, Gabby's mother received an odd text from Gabby's phone saying, "Can you help Stan? I just keep getting these voicemails and missed calls." Stan was Gabby's grandfather, and it was out of character for her to refer to him that way. So did you catch that? Watch again. He slams the door. He doesn't look very happy. And he doesn't look like the sweet, loving boy that doesn't get upset or have a temper like his mom said. What do you think? Let me know in the chat. On the 29th of August, people said they picked up Brian hitchhiking. Brian had talked to his parents on the 29th saying he was come back. So on the 30th of August, Gabby sends a text to her mom, "No service in Yosemite." So my question is, who had Gabby's phone? On the 1st of September, Brian returned home. Brian's dad, Christopher, said when he was talking to Brian on the 29th, everything hit the fan. He kept repeating that Gabby was gone, but he never said he killed her. He just wanted an attorney, and he wouldn't tell him why. They didn't believe that she was dead or that he killed her. They just couldn't think of that. The Laundries said they were told not to talk to Brian about anything, that Bertolino would call Brian. They didn't answer Gabby's parents' attempts to reach them. On September 11th, Gabby's parents reported her missing. On the 13th of September, Brian's parents reported him missing. In the deposition, they were also questioning Brian's mom about why didn't, they think it was weird that Brian drove Gabby's van back home. She said she had always thought that it was Brian's van and that Gabby's parents would be picking her up. But she had also said earlier that she saw the van title was registered to Gabby's name. So they asked her why did they think it was his van, and she said, well, Brian paid for it. He worked on it and only put the title in her name to be nice to her as a gesture. Gabby had leased a car that he had paid for because she couldn't afford it. So she thought the van was in her name to be nice to her. Plus, she never saw Gabby driving it. I think these answers were to establish that Brian's parents did not think it was odd that he drove the van back to, Brian's house in Florida. And after Brian had returned to Florida, they went camping for a few days. Now remember, Gabby is missing, and yet the Laundries were doing normal things, like they went out for dinner, they watched TV. According to his mom, Brian then left on the 13th of September to go hiking. She did not think Brian was grieving. She thought he was worried and concerned. Now I want to bring up the letter that said burn after reading. And let's just look at a little clip and then we'll discuss it.
Roberta Laundrie not only swears that the letter was written well before Gabby's death, but that the references to burying a body and bringing a shovel were meant to convey her love and support for her son. She says the Petito's attorneys have taken her words out of context here. Now, according to both sets of attorneys, the letter is not dated, but Roberta claims that she wrote it and gave it to her son before he and Gabby left for their road trip. And she admits to writing burn after reading on the envelope of the letter, but says that was a reference to a book that they enjoyed. The Petito's attorneys say that in the letter, Roberta wrote in part that she would, quote, bring a shovel to help bury a body. But Roberta says she used several references to books and other inside jokes and phrases she and Brian shared, and that her comments had nothing to do with Gabby or her murder. She also says her comments were just a, quote, quirky way to reconnect with her son, and that that the letter's intent was to remind Brian how much she loved him. Roberta also swears that the FBI had the letter before Brian's remains were found and later released it back to them. And that's important because the Petito's attorneys say that the letter was found in the backpack that was discovered alongside Brian's remains, along with a suicide note and confession to Gabby's murder. Attorneys for Petito's family say that the letter helps prove that the Laundries not only knew Brian had killed Gabby, but that Roberta offered to help him cover up the crime.
So in the video that I did prior to this, Gabby's parents wanted this letter in as evidence, which Brian's mom says she gave to him in May when they first started out their road trip. But I will discuss this more in a bit, as the letter has no date on it, but I think it makes more sense that Brian's mom gave that letter, Byrne, after reading, when he went on the hiking trip the morning of the 13th of August. So the questions in the deposition continue as to why she wasn't worried about Gabby being gone. She said Gabby would just often come home at night. She would just, late at night, she would just disappear. One time, she later found out that Gabby went back to New York for a week. So she says she didn't keep track of her. She was an independent, woman. She would go out until 4 a.m. She wasn't their daughter, so she says, I'm not going to tell her what to do. Again, I think this was to establish another reason why Brian's parents were not worried about the fact that Gabby didn't come back with him. Some of the other questions that were discussed in the deposition was the $25,000 paid to Bertolino. Mrs. Laundrie thought, that it was to hire an attorney out west for Brian, and her husband thought it included fees for all three of them because the FBI wanted to talk to them. There was then some discussion about the statement Bertolino issued to the press and the Byrne after reading letter. After Gabby went missing, her remains were found on the 19th of September. She was identified on the 21st of September, and it was determined on the 12th of October that she was strangled. She was then asked, why did she report Brian missing? And she said, because when Brian went out on the 13th, he said he would be back later. So, very sad, but Brian was also found, his remains were found on the 20th of October. On the 23rd of November, we find out that Brian died from a single gunshot wound to the head. He had written a note saying he was responsible for Gabby's death. And his death was determined as suicide. And the Byrne after reading letter was found near his body in a backpack with his confession note. Okay, so this lawsuit was filed in 2022 regarding Gabby's parents, for the emotional pain and distress. And they claim, as I've mentioned, that the Laundries knew what happened to Gabby, where she could be found, as it took weeks to search for Gabby. The Laundries maintain their son, Brian, only kept saying, help me, Gabby's gone, and needs a lawyer. They did hire Stephen Bertoloni, a 30-year-old friend of their family, who handled the sale and purchase of homes, as it appeared Chris Laundrie would invest in homes, fix them up and sell them, and Bertoloni was their attorney. So, in my view, I think this was established to give some answers to why there were so many frequent calls to their attorney, who was not a criminal attorney. Maybe, it's just my opinion, speculation, they knew Brian would not need a criminal attorney. Maybe he told his parents that he was going to end it all. I feel it won't be too hard for, the Gabby's parents to prove that the burn after letter was probably given to Brian on the 13th because of, what the letter had contained. And Gabby's body hadn't been discovered yet either, so that would make a lot of sense. So in the deposition, they questioned Brian's mom a lot about this burn after reading letter. And so I just want to tell you about how she explained a verse that she had put on there. That she said, the verse was Romans chapter 8, verse 38. And she said it was because it shows how we can never be separated from God, the love God had for us. So she says she kind of was using that to show how powerful her love is for Brian, and that they could never be separated. But in the deposition, the question put to her was, why at the end of the letter did you write, nothing can separate us, not hatred, not even sin, not thinkable, the thinkable or unthinkable can get between us. It's very strange. Boy, oh boy, I want to know why she wrote that as well. Why did she pick Romans? And they asked her this question: why would you choose Romans 38? To quote in her letter, she said it was to illustrate how powerful her love is for her son. Now, to give you some background, the book of Romans, written by Paul, I interpret to be pretty darn heavy stuff, because my understanding is that Paul's letters to the Church of Rome he was referring to original sin, the first sin against God's laws, and when it was broken, our punishment, the debt we all have to pay, was death, meaning none of us will have eternal life here on earth. Paul at the time was going through a very dark place in his life, and the message to the church was laws essentially keep us from sinning. But when we do sin, i.e., no matter the sin, whatever the unthinkable, implying murder, you can always receive God's love. Now, that wasn't always the belief. It was believed that God will decide if you are worthy. And this is why I believe judges in the, when they would hand down death sentences, they would say the phrase, which I'm sure you all might recognize, "May God have mercy on your soul." A modern day thinking is that God loves unconditionally. And I would try to explain it to you, but I found a perfect clip of a modern day interpretation. So let's listen to that together. Then we'll talk about the law that the Petitos are saying the Laundries broke against them.
May be very different. All of us walk through difficulties. We're all fighting battles, but we're never absent of the love of God. I love how Romans 8, it starts with this thought of no condemnation. The scripture says there is therefore now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. It starts with no condemnation and it ends with no separation. Nothing can separate us from the love of God. Some of you may feel unlovable when you look at what you've done, or you're disappointed in who you've become, and you're thinking, could God ever love me? There's no condemnation. Don't let guilt or shame or feelings of worthlessness keep you from receiving this almighty love that'll chase you down. It'll overpower you. Sometimes I wrestle with my son. I put him on the ground and I'm like, Trevor, I love you and there ain't nothing you can do about it. Isn't that a great thought?
Well, that was pretty uplifting, wasn't it? So I'll leave links below to the full clip. Those of us who work in justice or who are interested in justice believe in the rule of law, but it must be a fair process to find the truth. It must incorporate relief for those who are truly remorseful. And to this very day, our justice system is about reform, recompense, meaning amends for harm or loss suffered, and compensation in the form of restitution for victims. Will the Petitas be awarded all the money that they've asked for? I don't think the Laundries have it. But it won't bring Gabby back. However, awards for damages is how the scales of justice stay balanced. So I just want to touch a bit on what is emotional stress. Normally, you have to prove someone else's negligence. You have to prove their actions caused you an emotional injury. And I discussed this in my previous video. Does this new information change anything in my opinion? Well, it verifies part of what's being alleged, that Brian's parents knew something bad had happened. But I think the fact that they knew something bad had happened and they reported it to a solicitor, they hired a solicitor for him, then I think that almost absolves them of any liability because, they're adults. His son was an adult and he had his own lawyer. So I don't think they would be held liable for remaining silent, though this is a jury trial. So, emotionally, they may feel that, it was awful to not talk to Gabby's parents and let them know what was going on. So you can check out my video on whether or not the attorney made a false hope statement to the press, saying something like, I hope Gabby is reunited with her family, to say this is reckless. Well, I found it ridiculous, given that he was supposed to be Brian's attorney. So, he couldn't reveal attorney-client privilege, but then he was also Brian's parents' attorney, and so the statement was made on their behalf, which they're saying they didn't know anything was going on. Just seems like there was a huge conflict, but they did waive their conflict. So we had that with Donna Adelson. She's using the same solicitor that Charlie Adelson, her son, used, and they waived their attorney conflict. So must be a thing going on. My previous video on this, the judge also had to say something about the attorney making a press release. So that was quite interesting, and it's worth watching, even if it's just for that. So this trial will be by a jury, and I think they'll vote emotionally. But under the law, the Laundries had a right to not say anything. And the question is, was the statement to the press reckless? The Laundries did say they felt pressure to say something, and they were hoping to calm everyone down. Though Roberta said when she found out Gabby was gone, they were very sad. Interesting, isn't it, that she used the same word Brian used when they found out Gabby was found dead. So I think that's going to be all very interesting. So as we heard in this video, Gabby Petito's parents did win a wrongful death suit against Brian Laundrie's estate. They did settle that through mediation. I have heard that they are going through mediation for this case, prior to this case going to court, though I know Gabby's parents want answers. The Petitos have helped so many victims through domestic violence by setting up a Gabby Petito Foundation. So please check that out. And I also want to let you know about this beautiful cloud formation where angel wings just appeared when Joey Brooklyn was doing a tribute to Gabby Petito. So I want to leave you with that. please check out his channel. He does amazing stuff. I should mention that Joey Brooklyn is in New York and Gabby Petito was from New York. So it was even more special that the cloud formation turned into angel wings like a miracle, because we were saying a prayer for her 1-year anniversary. Joey Brooklyn did this wonderful tribute for her. So I thought it would be fitting to use some AI and remove the trucks so that the water in the sunset was in perfect view, just like Abby would have liked it. She loved to be around the sun and the water, and we all pray for justice for Gabby Petito. Please like this video, share this video, and let me know your comments in the description area. I'm Karen Cole from Legal Minded Friends. Information is power. By leaving a comment, you may help someone else that will read your comment. And of course, I love to read all comments as they are valued, and together we can be more informed. And this information may help you or someone you know. In the meantime, on this channel, you'll find a variety of playlists to suit every curiosity about the justice system. And we provide you with a visual to information and the process. Going through a legal worry is devastating, and the Who Knew and Why Me playlists are designed to help you or someone you know. So please like this video if you like this kind of content. Hit the subscribe button and the notification bell if you want to be notified when I'm going live or upload another video. I'm Karen Cole from Legal Minded Friends. Information is power, meaning if you know something, you can make decisions that are right for you.